My husband, Brian, whom I supported through thick and thin, was promoted to department head, but then he was taken away by my best friend. He discarded me and the child we had raised together, betraying me as completely as my once trusted friend. It was the lowest point of my life, but thanks to my daughter, who was now an adult starting her career, I managed to recover and move forward. 2 years later, I ran into them unexpectedly in the city. My former best friend sneered as she glanced at the man standing beside me. "A poor-looking old man suits you well," she said smugly. I smiled calmly. "Good to see you. Don't you recognize me?" She looked confused. My ex-husband rushed over, panicking. I turned to them both and said, "Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Sarah. Until 2 years ago, I was Sarah Ingram." 2 years ago, my husband Matt, the man I married at 24 after a whirlwind romance, asked me for a divorce. It happened just after he was promoted to department head. I had met Matt when I was a new hire, fresh out of college, and he was my senior colleague and mentor. Not long into our relationship, I discovered I was pregnant. Without hesitation, we decided to marry, and I left my job to focus on our child, Emma, who is now 22 and thriving in her career. I had thought I could finally enjoy the second half of my life with Matt. With Emma grown and independent, we'd have more time for each other, but that hope was shattered on the day Matt came home wearing a distant expression. I had prepared a special dinner to celebrate his promotion. When he sat down, he avoided my eyes. "We need to talk," he said gravely. My heart sank, but I tried to stay optimistic. Maybe he wanted to talk about our future now that his career was stable. I had imagined he might thank me for my years of support or even surprise me with plans for a vacation. Instead, his words cut through me like a knife. "I want a divorce. I've fallen in love with someone else." I was stunned. 4 years, I had supported him, raising Emma largely on my own while he chased his ambitions. I believed him every time he said he was busy with work dinners or business golf. I hadn't seen any signs of his betrayal. My life revolved around our family, and I thought I could rely on his gratitude and loyalty. But instead, Matt left me for my best friend. They both betrayed the trust one had placed in them. Alone and heartbroken, I struggled to rebuild my life. It was Emma who kept me going, her strength and determination inspiring me to move forward. Now, 2 years later, as I stood face to face with them in the city, I felt nothing but calm. The man next to me, a kind and supportive partner, smiled as I introduced myself anew. My ex-husband and former friend looked shaken, but I was unbothered. I had already reclaimed my life. I chose not to complain and supported Matt from behind the scenes. I had witnessed firsthand the challenges he faced after our unexpected pregnancy and my decision to resign from work. One of Matt's superiors once said, "He's a rookie with a slow work pace, but he sure knows how to get a woman pregnant fast." That stung both of us deeply. Matt faced constant criticism, and not all of our colleagues supported our decision to get married. Despite this, he endured the judgment and worked tirelessly to prove himself. His dedication eventually paid off with an early promotion to department head. I wanted to ensure his success reflected well on both of us. I went out of my way to choose thoughtful gifts for his bosses and their families, even when it took extra effort. At company events, I smiled politely, aware I was being judged for leaving work early or stepping away from my career. I didn't mind. I did all of it because I believed in him and wanted to see him succeed. But rather than thank me for my unwavering support, Matt delivered the ultimate betrayal. Until the day he asked for a divorce, I hadn't suspected for a moment that Matt was having an affair. Was I foolish? Had I been blind to the signs? I had to know the truth, no matter how painful. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice trembling. Perhaps it was just an infatuation, and he wasn't serious about ending our family. Matt hesitated before responding. "You know her. She's someone close to you." My mind raced as I tried to piece it together. Was it a former coworker? One of Emma's friends? That idea felt too absurd, too inappropriate. It would make Matt look creepy. Could it be one of the families we knew through Emma's activities, like swimming or ballet? But Matt rarely participated in those events. He didn't even drive Emma to her lessons. "Just tell me," I said, my patience wearing thin. He sighed and shouted, "It's Michelle." Michelle? The name struck me like a blow. Michelle had been my best friend since childhood, the person I trusted most. We'd shared everything, our joys, our struggles, and even our families. When Matt and I got engaged, Michelle had asked me to introduce her to one of Matt's friends. She later married him, and they had a daughter, Jessica, who was 3 years younger than Emma. 4 years, we bonded over parenting, organizing barbecues, and sharing advice. I had never imagined she would betray me like this. Memories of Michelle flooded my mind. Once, when I was holding on to some of Emma's outgrown clothes, Michelle had joked, "Holding on to these things like this? That's the sign of a toxic parent. It's just stuff. Sarah, you need to let go, or you'll be that kind of mom." Her words had stung, but I took them to heart and tried to be less sentimental. Later, I gave Michelle some of Emma's old clothes and toys as hand-me-downs. However, I struggled to part with one item, Emma's preschool uniform. It held too many memories of her first year of school. I lied to Michelle, saying I might need it for another child, and asked her to return it once Jessica was done with it. Michelle's marriage didn't last, and by the time Jessica was in kindergarten, she and her husband divorced. When she handed me back the preschool uniform, I was relieved to have it again, even though it was worn and patched, but her words stung as she handed it over. "Must be nice to be a housewife." Huh, Sarah? I'm still dating, but as a single parent, I can't give Jessica a sibling. At the time, Michelle hadn't shared the details of her marital problems. I empathized with her struggles, but I was also dealing with my own disappointments. I had wanted a second child, but Matt's long hours and lack of interest left no room for that discussion. I let go of that dream, feeling grateful that I was better off than Michelle in some ways. But now, hearing Matt utter her name, the betrayal felt unbearable. Michelle, who once accused me of still dating my own husband, had stolen him from me. "The guy you introduced me to left me for another woman, Sarah," she had once said bitterly. I hadn't denied it then, only smiled sympathetically. I never imagined she would turn around and do the same thing to me. Michelle picked a fight with me not long after her divorce. It all started because she'd asked me to introduce her to someone I barely knew, her now ex-husband. When I first met him, Michelle was immediately drawn to his looks and made it her mission to pursue him. I had advised her to take things slow and really get to know him, but she didn't listen. Later, when her marriage fell apart, she blamed me. I was confused but sympathetic, recognizing she needed a friend to lean on during a tough time. I didn't hold it against her. After her divorce, I tried to support Michelle and her daughter, Jessica, however I could. I even registered as Jessica's emergency contact at her daycare. If Jessica got sick and Michelle couldn't leave work, I'd pick her up, take her to the doctor, and look after her until Michelle was free. I adjusted my part-time work schedule to be there for Jessica when she started middle school, as she spent afternoons at my house instead of daycare. It wasn't easy, but I wanted to help. When my own daughter, Emma, graduated from elementary school and moved on to middle school, my life took a turn. A clerk at my part-time job got married and relocated, and my company offered me a full-time position. Matt, my husband, supported the idea of increasing our household income, and Emma was on board too. After years of focusing on family, I was excited to take on this new chapter. However, working full-time meant I couldn't continue looking after Jessica after school. Michelle and I had to adjust. Jessica began coming home to an empty house, but I figured it wasn't my responsibility anymore. Life moved on. Over the next 9 years, Michelle and I saw less of each other. Although we didn't meet as often as we had when our daughters were young, I still considered her my best friend. Then, one day, Matt's unexpected words shattered that illusion. "I want a divorce. I'm in love with Michelle." His declaration hit me like a ton of bricks. I tried to laugh it off, thinking it had to be some kind of joke. "You're kidding, right? Michelle is my best friend." But Matt's expression was deadly serious. "I know she's your best friend, but I've fallen for her. I can't help how I feel." I stared at him, stunned. How could a 49-year-old man with a 22-year-old daughter speak so childishly? It felt like I was trapped in some absurd soap opera. "So it's just your crush, right? Michelle would never betray me." Desperate for clarity, I called Michelle. She picked up immediately. "Michelle, can you come over? Matt's saying some crazy things." But instead of laughing it off, Michelle chuckled. "Oh, I already know. Matt told me he was asking you for a divorce today." "You knew?" My heart sank. "You've been talking to him?" Her voice was cheerful, almost gleeful. "Yes, Sarah, I'm sorry, but Matt's in love with me now. He wants to divorce you and marry me." The world seemed to spin. This had to be a cruel joke. My husband and my best friend conspiring together? It was too much to believe. Matt left the room muttering something about going out for a smoke, something he hadn't done since I was pregnant. When had he started again? When he returned, he wasn't alone. Michelle walked in beside him, and they both looked resolute. "Sarah, I'm really sorry," Matt began, "but we've confirmed our feelings for each other. Michelle is the right partner for me now." Despite her words of apology, Michelle's smirk was unmistakable. I couldn't help but snap. "Didn't you already have a boyfriend, Michelle? You always did, even after your divorce. And some of them supported you financially. Her expression hardened. Sarah, don't bring that up in front of Matt. Those boyfriends were just temporary. The truth is, I've always loved Matt. She even mustered fake tears, putting on a melodramatic display. To my shock, Matt reached out and stroked her hair tenderly. Sarah, don't blame Michelle, he said softly, as if this betrayal was something I simply needed to accept. It was like Matt wanted to cast himself as some tragic hero in this ridiculous drama. Watching him and Michelle, I could hardly believe these people were real. My heart shattered as tears rolled silently down my cheeks. I whispered, since when? We've been meeting in secret for a long time, Michelle admitted shamelessly, but we only started talking seriously about marriage after Matt's promotion was confirmed. I felt like a fool. I had trusted them both, and now it was clear they had been betraying me behind my back. Michelle must have seen Matt's promotion as an opportunity to improve her own life and latched onto the idea of marriage. Her arrogance was unbearable. So now that you know, hurry up and divorce him already, she said, smirking. Her attitude made my tears feel ridiculous. I forced myself to respond, fine, I'll divorce him, but I couldn't resist asking, what about Jessica? Does she know? Don't ignore your daughter's feelings. At the mention of Jessica, Matt's face briefly registered guilt. He dropped his gaze. Jessica turned 18 and moved out. She's no longer my responsibility, he muttered. Then, astonishingly, he added, it's probably your fault she turned out so defiant, considering how much time she spent with you. Their callousness was staggering. I hadn't spoken to Jessica in some time, so I hadn't even known she had moved out. When Matt produced the divorce papers, with Michelle's signature already on the guarantor section, I couldn't muster the energy to argue. Seeing that grotesque document, I agreed to the divorce on the spot. Matt packed his things and moved out to live with Michelle. I never thought Michelle would have the audacity to treat my husband like one of my daughter's hand-me-down clothes. Yet here we were. When Emma returned from her business trip the next day, I told her everything. Her reaction was sharper than I expected. That man isn't my father anymore, she said firmly. And Michelle? She's the worst person I've ever known. Her words startled me, but I saw how strong Emma had become. I had worried she would be deeply hurt, but she handled the news better than I had imagined. Even so, her anger burned hot. Have you talked to Jessica? I asked. I'm worried she might be struggling. Mom, stop worrying about other people and start thinking about yourself, Emma said, her eyes brimming with tears. Seeing her so raw and vulnerable, I realized she had suffered more than she let on. I hugged her, something we hadn't done in years. I vowed to be a better parent, someone Emma could truly be proud of. 2 years passed without a word from Matt or Michelle. Emma thrived in her new independence, and we saw no reason to reach out to her father. Michelle had moved far away after marrying Matt, and our paths never crossed until one fateful evening. After attending a play, I ran into them in the city by chance. Our eyes met, and I couldn't avoid them. Michelle's mocking voice cut through the air. A poor-looking old man suits you, she sneered, glancing disdainfully at the man beside me. I didn't take the bait. I had just enjoyed a lovely evening with my new boyfriend, Jonathan. He and I had been watching the play together. Instead of responding to her insult, I shot her a level look. Good to see you, Michelle. Don't you recognize him? Michelle's smug expression faltered, and she stared at Jonathan in disbelief. Matt looked equally stunned. Wait, you're Jonathan? Matt stammered. Jonathan had been Matt's senior at the company, mentoring him when he first started. He had once taken the fall for a mistake Matt made, which had cost Jonathan his job. I hadn't known this back then, but we reconnected recently through a mutual acquaintance. That's how we had started dating. Michelle's face twisted as she remembered. I had once introduced Jonathan to her as a potential partner, but she had rejected him, saying he was too old and not stylish enough. Now, Jonathan looked different, his appearance more polished and refined. Michelle's disdain for anything understated had blinded her to his true worth. Jonathan spoke calmly but firmly. Relax, Michelle. It's not a big company, and my income isn't huge, but starting my own business worked out for the best. Michelle's eyes widened in horror. What? He's a CEO? She blurted, her crassness on full display. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have married Matt. He's so cheap. Her outburst only made me pity her more. Jonathan, ever composed, simply shrugged. It's not about titles, Michelle. It's about character. Just then, I noticed Emma and Jessica standing nearby. Having overheard the scene, guilt tugged at me. They shouldn't have had to witness this embarrassment. Yet their expressions were resolute. Still relying on men after all these years. Emma said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. When will you ever learn? Michelle turned, startled, and suddenly adopted a parental tone. Jessica, Emma, how have you been? But their daughters weren't buying it. Jessica, standing tall, spoke with quiet strength. I loved you once, Mom, but after the divorce, you moved us around and dated random men. It made me uncomfortable and ashamed. I used to wish Miss Sarah was my mom. Her words pierced my heart. I hugged her tightly, feeling a bond stronger than ever before. Jonathan's voice broke the tension. Come on, let's leave these foolish people behind and go have a nice meal. We walked away, leaving Matt and Michelle to their hollow lives. Later, I learned from an old classmate that they had divorced. Matt had finally reached his breaking point after Michelle repeatedly belittled him. Emma and Jessica grew closer, like true sisters. Jonathan eventually proposed, and I accepted. Looking back, I realized my first marriage had been a mistake, but it had led me to where I belonged. Together, Jonathan, Emma, Jessica, and I are building a new life, filled with love and laughter.